Brian O'Driscoll on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now, whether you're watching on Facebook Live or listening on the radio, you're very welcome. We're looking back at the opening weekend of the Rugby World Cup. To do so, we have Brian O'Driscoll in studio. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
Good to have you with us.
Thanks a lot.
Ireland 27, Scotland 3 yesterday morning. Bonus point win in the bag. They were on the bullet train this morning. They've moved to Shizuoka for Japan on Saturday morning. I was saying to Ronan O'Gara yesterday, most of us expected Ireland to win, but bonus point and a 24 points winning margin, there was a lovely sheen on that scoreboard. What about the performance? What did we see here?
Yeah, really good first performance, really good. Just built on really good foundations. Relatively low error count considering the condition, particularly the second half. Built their scores brilliantly well. Again, I think some key contributors really stepped up to the plate. Conor Murray, really great 60 minutes. Thought some of the pack were outstanding. Great to see CJ stand there back, carrying really well, tackling ferociously. And then, what happened with the three forwards tries in the first 20 minutes just set the tone for the rest of the game. So overall, they would have to be very, very pleased. Trying to contain themselves a little bit as much as we containing the public expectation and excitement and my own, because I really felt as though it was. Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not. I think New Zealand looked very good in parts, but I think as an overall 80-minute performance of just being in maximum control of the game, I think definitely it was a performance, the performance of 2019, that's for sure.
It was reassuring just to see a bit of energy back about the team and sharpness back about the team, because it's been so flat for so long now, or what feels like so long.
Yeah, they've been saying in the background that they feel as though they're really at a great place, irrespective of what happened in the warm-up games, that they feel as though they're really in a really good spot. So they obviously know. Of course they were going to say that they're in a good spot. You're going to hear Joe Schmidt saying, no, we're happy with how the pre-season has gone. He's not going to say, no, we're on the back foot now after getting decimated in Twickenham. It's always going to be, yeah, we're building towards something. But it really feels as though now, after one performance in the World Cup, that it definitely is going that direction. And I think there's a lot to feel excited about, particularly because we've just played the most difficult game in our pool, and we comfortably won. And albeit we got 4 tries, the minimum needed for the bonus point. To beat Scotland by 24 points at any stage is a really great outcome, and it just the victory never looked as though it was going to go any other way.
No. Perfect start, scores on the board early. There's then scoreboard pressure in Scotland. Rain sets in, Ireland in complete control, really. It was hard to think of anything more than a 2 or 3 minute period maximum where they didn't feel in complete control of things.
And even then, when did Scotland, they'd defend a line out, deep down in Irish territory. It really didn't look as though there were too many 5-point opportunities. Even when they play this mad aggressive line speed in the first half, and I think that
we haven't seen that in a while, have we?
No, it really caught Scotland off guard. So I was looking at that where Bundy Aki picked up what looked like his facial injury, where we used to do that a little bit in the past off a scrum, off the first scrum. It's just to throw a spanner in the heads of the opposition that you're going to mix your defence up, and you'll just play a flash defence and not think about what might happen out wide. You got to force them to get out there, and their passes have to be on the money and thrown in perfectly synchronised fashion, from first to second to third, or 2 long passes. And at that stage, you feel as though you can shut the gate closed. They still got it out wide, but it's almost worthwhile conceding 10 or 15 metres by doing that, because straight away Finn Russell's going, what? Hammer defence? But it's off first phase. No one hammers off first. So the fact that everyone did their job brilliantly, Johnny didn't have to make a tackle, Bundy smashed, was it Russell or Sam Johnson? Jacob came in, Stockdale came in and hit Stuart Hogg as he was throwing the pass. And there were 2 over with Larimer closing the gate, but if you see how hard Murray worked as well, the scramble was brilliant. And there was a concession. If you look at it, you wouldn't be delighted with conceding that much, but I think there was way more to it than actually than just trying to shut it down. It was about trying to plant a seed, and it kept coming. Finn Russell was given no time, and we've seen him pull teams apart himself with that long looping pass for Hugh Jones in the England game a couple of years ago, and he is one of the best passing 10s out there. But he likes to have time on the ball, and he likes to be able to read defence. If you don't allow that, he's got to throw it early, and he threw some sloppy passes as a result of the pressure he was under.
And had we seen this type of Irish defence in recent times?
No, what often happens is you'll throw in one and then you'll play off a little bit, and then you might come back a bit later in the game. It's all about setting up a shape or a formation that that the opposition will have scouted, and then changing at the very last second. So, England caught us a couple of times playing 8-9s to the back line, and I was wondering whether that was a trigger to play this. It probably wasn't. I think it's the sort of thing that you have to pre-call, because if you think about getting the message from Johnny Sexton out to Jacob Stockdale in a short time frame, it's impossible. So they probably would have said before the game, if there's a scrum on the left-hand side, between the two 22s, we're gonna flash it, and we're gonna get in their heads, and we're gonna set our tone really early, and they did. Even though Scotland very nearly broke them, I thought it was just a really clever thing to have done.
You mentioned Conor Murray. I was just thinking back to Six Nations time, when literally we were sitting in his TV studio and looking at how one biceps was smaller than the other, and this guy was a long way off being his best again, and you wondered would he turn it around for the World Cup. So you checked him there. What were you seeing from Murray in particular?
With the exits, his box kicking was absolutely outstanding. Like a 20-metre gain on a box kick is pretty good going, depending on how where the ruck is situated. But he seems to get every last sinew out of distance out of his kicks, where. He doesn't drop them on the touchline. He drops them 4 or 5 metres into touch to discourage that quick line out as well. So he gives his forwards a breather as well. It seems as though they're nearly on the money every single time, and he hasn't had that accuracy over the last number of months. And I'm sure the injury was playing in his head, but it looks as though he's finally fit and feeling good and feeling free. And I think the knock-on effect is the rest of his game reverts back to type. I thought our exits after scoring each time were top class as well. You're at your most vulnerable, obviously, when you've scored, because the opposition feels wounded, and they ratchet up their chase and get after you. Whereas the ability to pick the ball, Farrell picked one on the third try above his head. Lovely catch, set up, played a couple of phases, and then they either went from Murray or from Sexton. Sometimes cleared to touch, just kicked long on one occasion, and then just a good defensive line and forced Scotland into having to play or create something. So I just thought that was a really concise part of their game that sometimes people take for granted.
Sure.
But if you get that right, and it reinforces the score. It almost feels like a mini score after, where you don't concede territory or possession immediately after scoring 5 or 7 points.
It's psychological fill up on top of the score to the opposition.
Exactly. It's like you're going to have to work really hard. You're going to have to pull a rabbit from a hat, because we're going to do our basics extremely well, and we're not going to play that much rugby in our own 22. And Ireland in the past, we look back to games where they liked playing 6 and 7 phases back in their own 22 and really setting themselves up for the perfect exit. I think now they're cutting that cloth a little bit, where it seems to be like 2 or 3 phases to get a kicker on both sides. We didn't have a left footer with Rob Kearney this time round, so maybe you saw Conor Murray going to the box kick a little bit more, where he might switch between Sexton and Kearney, but I just thought they were in full control.
Yeah. So is that all part of the same story here, which this was a very well-drilled, well-planned, sharp performance? Everything was in good working order. That's all these things in a microcosm add up to that.
Yeah, they just made really good decisions. even the Conway try is, it's a pretty basic try. It's a kick contest. He gets up and gets a challenge. Ryan Wilson will be disgusted that he doesn't take that take, but he gets nudged in the air by Conway. It's the small things. Larmour picks up the scraps, and then Conway gets up off the ground, sees straight away that there's space down the blind side. Fraser Brown, watching the video today, doesn't cover himself in glory. He's late getting back to the line. He's just off the bench, late getting back into the line, kind of walking, and Conway roars for it, gets it from Murray, and Burns on the outside, steps back inside. Fraser Brown probably could have gotten something on him if he'd worked harder earlier. So it's as much as Ireland were on the front foot the whole game, Scotland just looked a little bit off the pace the whole up.
Well, that would be the nagging voice in the back of the head as we broaden things out to quarter-final on the horizon, is just how bad were Scotland.
They were poor.
How much of that was to do with our...
A lot was to do with how much Ireland didn't allow Scotland play, and once the weather came down in the second half, you kind of licked your lips, thinking a 16-point lead is huge in conditions like this. Particularly the fact that Scotland hadn't played very well in the first half. They kicked incredibly loosely. Thought they got Ireland into the game, particularly the back three, kicked two non-contestable balls down to Larmour.
He couldn't have asked for two better balls to start at fullback.
Time, and then get his footwork going. Plus, the track was made for him as well. Before the rain came down, it looked like you could have played snooker on it, and. He was, happy out playing, built his confidence up. Conway took one early on as well. He'd spilt one after 17 or 18 minutes, which he'll be annoyed at. But for the most part, the back three, I thought, had a very good game. Stockdale again, really good. He made one error with the one, positionally brilliant. Just took his eye off the ball at the last second. The one that came over his head, a difficult take, and then he came off his foot into touch. But what I liked about him was that pendulum of working with his full back in particular, or whoever was in the backfield, of being able to read it ahead of time. And then one thing we've questioned about him is his defence, and not just his positioning of it, but the appetite for it and the hunger for it. It was so great to see the level of impact he had when he smashed Stuart Hogg shooting up out of the line and forcing a knock on. Like, that is, it feels as though you can't build that into someone. They either want to do it or they don't. Okay. So to see that level of aggression, and it seemed as though he wanted to hurt him.
Yeah,
and you need that. Yeah, there's a nasty edge to him, and we know that everything going forward on that left foot is just one of the most educated boots in world rugby at the moment.
Another one which bounced up for him perfectly, as per usual.
Yeah.
How close, you look, so Stockdale is in, and then you've got Earls and Carney now deemed fit. Like, Earls, Carberry and Carney were deemed fit, and hopeful was the word used to describe Henshaw's. And I think we can write Henshaw safely off for this weekend. So how close would Larmour and Conway be to looking over at Rob Carney and Keith Earls and saying, we're the ones in possession and we're doing just fine, and there's no way you can take us out of the team just yet?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's one that I don't know if I have the answer to. I think the two boys still have enough credit in the bank, Carney and Earls. I do. But that gap has narrowed massively, and narrowed massively off the back of the weekend's performance as well. It's one thing doing it against Italy in Soldier Field, but where Larmour scored a hat-trick, but doing it in a World Cup match against your toughest opponents in your pool, and standing up to every test asked of you, and doing your basics brilliantly well, and working hard. I think they're all the attributes that Joe Schmidt absolutely loves in his players. And I thought Conway's really performed brilliantly in the last 5 or 6 weeks.
His form's too good to ignore at the moment.
It is, and I've played with Keith Earls, and I've obviously played with Andrew Conway as well, but I've played with Keith Earls, and I've always felt as though the public have had an underappreciation for how gifted and talented he is. And I think we saw in the last couple of years what Keith Earls is capable of. He looks as though he has that Stockdale element, that it looks as though he's going to beat the first man every time. Very good defensively, very clever, reads it well, lots of experience in that regard, and he hasn't lost a metre of speed, or an inch of speed, I should say. But he's he's now starting to get under pressure because of the top quality performances of Conway.
Well, that's an interesting one to watch then. When you talk about Ireland in attack generally, so 3 of the tight 5 scored the opening tries, and then there's Conway's try, as you mentioned, and you used the word basic, not in a derogatory way, but just there was a simplicity to it. So if the word predictable was used about Ireland over the last year or so, give or take. Are we any less predictable now? Like when you look at the subtleties, so big picture I can kind of see it, but you're looking at the subtleties, so like attacking pods and shape and different quirks on different moves. Are we pretty much still working off the 2018 blueprint? We're just back to doing that very, very well? Or have things moved on a little bit? Are we now asking different questions?
I think it does. You can pull it back to being collision winners, and they won a lot more collisions than they lost at the weekend. And I mean, particularly when they were carrying the ball. You know, for most of the games that they've been beaten in 2019, they've been smashed in the tackle, and sometimes it's about an extra foot or an extra 2 feet can be the difference between, you know, the alignment of the first support player coming in through the gate rather than having to arrow or L in.
Yes.
And so the impact can be more substantial coming straight from behind the ruck rather than coming from the side.
Yeah.
Which has a knock-on effect to the speed of the ruck, to the accuracy, to not needing another person to come and finish the job off. All those little aspects add up, but it starts with the ball carrier, and the ball carrier had a good day on Saturday. Really good footwork to the line, you know, great latches, identification of when a player was going to contact, where players went in, stuck an arm around. We saw Henderson making a great line break, and Johnny Sexton ran a great support line on the inside. Henderson didn't hear him or didn't see him. But as soon as he made contact, Johnny was straight in, arm on latch, bang, straight over him, trying to create quick ruck ball for whoever it was following up. So those sort of things, they might seem insignificant, but the bigger picture knock-on effect of those becomes very, very positive.
No, it's a fair point. It's like in an arm wrestle, just when you tilt it in your favour, things get much easier. So I don't have much experience with that, by the way. It's harder to defend. But so is it more about...
Sometimes you can snap your arm though in those arm wrestles too. You got to be careful.
So is it more about things like latching and support lines and picking your contact better? Is it more that stuff and they're suddenly doing that well again, as opposed to, not to be overly simplistic, but Ireland are physically stronger than Scotland and they won't be able to do that in the same way to South Africa?
Well, South Africa will be a much sterner test than Scotland for sure. I was disappointed with Scotland's physicality. I thought they didn't bring the edge that you would associate with Scotland. You know, niggly, difficult to break down, you know, troublesome at ruck time.
You wouldn't have thought it was their biggest match in 4 years. Really,
like once Hamish Watson went as well, he looked as though the makings of their of the biggest pest on their team, and you take him out of the equation, particularly when you see John Barkley being subbed off with 20 or 25 minutes to go. You know you're winning the battle of the breakdown then if they're trying to bring in reinforcements. So I just thought on the whole, the accuracy at the ruck, and it's a key component to the game. About speed of ruck ball, and it begins. Joe talks about the 60% man being the ball carrier. That's the responsibility of you, of the fight and the placement of the ball, rather than, you know, being caught on your back. You're caught on your back straight away. The ball is likely to be locked in for longer. You got to fight onto your stomach, fight to get long arms, you know, from post to post rather than, you know, laterally from sideline to sideline. Make sure you're elongating the ruck. All those things have a positive knock-on effect, and I thought the whole side to a man did it extremely well. It wasn't, of course, there was an error count. You know, there was knock-ons, and there was you know, penalties given up. But you know, as an overall performance, I thought there was a huge amount to be positive about, and not that much negativity. I just thought there was a control without having to kick it into fifth or sixth gear. That's the other thing. It wasn't an all black performance. It was, you know, of a year ago, it was a super solid performance, but feeling as though there's a little bit left in the tank as well.
I guess a parallel with the France game 4 years ago. Johnny Sexton, I mean, it depends where you're reading or who you're listening to. So, took a bang to the thigh is maybe the closest we've got to an official explanation. I saw Rory O'Connor in the Irish Independent mentioned a suspected groin strain, but I don't know, again, that comes with a health warning, no pun intended. So, what we do know certainly is from the 26th minute, he handed over the kicking duties to Conor Murray. Joe Schmidt said afterwards, if this had been a tighter game, Johnny would have kicked those kicks.
I would believe that too.
Okay.
I believe that too, because there would have been dialogue, a lot of dialogue between whoever was Richie Murphy running water, or the physios or the docs when they were going out and giving him treatment. You know, there's a direct line from Joe Schmidt, and he would have been asking, you know, taking everything into the context of the overall World Cup. It was not going to be worthwhile, particularly the timing of when it happens, having been 3 tries up.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a very good position. Why would you risk arguably your most important player if he didn't go, do you know what, I'll be okay. It's 95% fine, but do you know what, maybe I'm better off not kicking, because do you know what, I don't have to put myself under that 5% pressure of actually tearing something.
Yeah.
So I think it was, you know, it was prudent to take him off when they did, when the game was done.
Yeah.
And I don't, on the basis of what I saw, I wouldn't be particularly worried about it. Yeah.
If it got to a point where Sexton said, I'm able to play, but I just can't take the kicks, and Joey Carberry's not in the field, and we're in say it's a quarter-final, and, you know, Murray does his best, but he doesn't have the percentages of Sexton. Is Sexton so integral to Ireland's play that you'd say, OK, stay on, don't take the kicks, we'll take our chances with Murray?
It's a tough one. It's getting to decision time then, because it's important that you knock your goals over. You know, in reality, are we going to score 4 tries against the Springboks or the All Blacks? Yeah, we have done it in the past, and we're very capable of scoring tries. But you do, in World Cups, there'll be a game that you're going to need the scoreboard ticking over.
Yeah.
You know, why did England get to successive World Cup finals with Johnny Wilkinson? Because he knows to take his 3-pointers, and it's drop goals and it's penalties, and it's that Munster of old of 3, 6, 9, and then you score a try, and it's out of sight. So those sort of things in the tighter games against Scotland, a poor performing Scotland, that's not relevant. Whereas in other games, you'll have to reevaluate, you know, how key an 80% or an 85% goal kicker is going to be, and I would imagine quite key.
Okay, so you might have to reluctantly say,
like, listen, we're talking in ifs, buts and maybes, you know. I hope
talking about sport.
but also, you know, we're talking about an injury that might not be an injury, and so on. So,
but they might have to have that chat themselves in advance. They might have to say, well, what would we do?
Yeah, I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would.
What do you think they'd say?
Well, I know what Johnny Sexton would say. Conor Murray's a very good goal kicker.
Yeah.
So he's very important, Johnny, to the team. And as lovely a player as Joey Carberry is, I just think that Johnny Sexton, there's a calmness goes through the whole team with him at the helm, because he's in for the fight, you know, as well as the subtlety to the game. And I just feel as though if they're to do semi-final or final, that he needs to be fit for 7/8 of the game at least. Last
one or two in Ireland then. Ian Henderson is calling the lineouts, it turns out. They were 12 from 12. Admittedly, 1 or 2 a bit lucky, but still
good one from Andrew Porter.
Yeah,
pluck.
Yeah, exactly. And he, you know, that 25 metres at the start to set up the first try. So I guess Joe Schmidt could turn around and say, well, whatever about Devon Tunner being in the squad or not, this is why Henderson's in the team. We need that bit of dynamism about the place.
Yeah, he's possibly been guilty in the past of coming in and out of games. Whereas what a great performance. All-round performance. He got subbed off for Tyke Byrne, wasn't it? Was it him? But he, you know, for the 70 minutes that he was on, I thought he was very good. You know, stole a good ball after a great counter ruck from Josh van der Fleer that almost led to Conway getting in for the 4th score before he actually got it. There was lots of moments, lots of really clever. He's a smart player. Henderson, yeah. He's a heads-up rugby player, and he reads things well and identifies when there's an opportunity to get a steal or hold up a maul, and he doesn't waste his energy a lot, and I think that's a sign of good players and really good footballers, that they don't go for 30% at a lost cause and lose that energy reserve. They hold suit and wait for the next opportunity, and it was one of his better performances in Ireland for quite some time.
Yeah,
he's still as well. People are kind of questioning his selection. Like, for me, it's a shoe-in start of Ryan and Henderson.
Right,
an absolute shoe-in.
Okay,
like they're our number one second row partnership.
Okay, right. Aki and O'Mahony failed their HIA 1. They've passed HIA 2, so nobody has been ruled out for Saturday. HIA 3 is to come, or may well have happened today. I think it was due to happen today. Regardless, you wouldn't be surprised if both of them were treated with precautionary kid gloves, which would mean Chris Farrell would start alongside Ringrose, given Henshaw's situation as well. He seemed to do great when he came. He
was really good. He was one of Ireland's best performers. He got a good hour, and defensively very solid, carried hard, particularly the conditions, for a bigger man, when you need a bit of simplicity of just carrying over the advantage line, but then he had those beautiful subtle hands for switch back into Luke McGrath.
That's what I like. That's the cheap stuff that gets me off my seat. That's what I want. Well, we don't see Ireland. We don't see Ireland do enough of that sometimes.
No, everyone likes that, but also in those conditions, to have it takes a talented player to be able to throw those ones and not think about it. And it was absolutely, he brought the ball one direction, pulled Stuart Hogg in, and then flipped out the back, and should have scored off it.
Right. No one seems to be out of form here.
No,
anyone you were looking at saying, just give me a bit more?
No, because listen, Peter wasn't on for very long, so it's hard to give a proper rating on him. Cian Healy, very workmanlike. I thought the pack was very good. Thought Conan was really good when he came on. Van der Fleer, got through a mountain of work as well. I thought the pack was really, really good. And no, it's hard to. There weren't any headline performances. Stockdale, chip and chase, brilliant, and. But beyond that, you kind of think, what else happened in the game? Great tackle. But it's all the small micro details that actually people won't have picked up on, of pressing hard or, of shutting down space or covering the backfield. I thought from that point of view, it looked as though it was a very solid performance. So, no, it's hard to pick holes in anyone's, but at the same time, let's not get excessively excited.
Okay. We're going to take a very short break. There's obviously the New Zealand-South Africa game. I want to get your thoughts on the opening weekend generally. So we're back in 1 second with Brian. All our rugby coverage is with thanks to Vodafone. Team of us, everyone in. Back in a moment.
OTB Sports Radio.
The 2019 Boyle Sports World Grand Prix Darts is back at the City West Convention Centre, Dublin, from the 6th to the 12th of October. See 32 of the biggest darting stars on the planet, including world number 1 Michael van Gerwen, former Grand Prix champion Darryl Gurney, plus fan favourite Peter Wright. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.ie and search darts. The 2019 Boyle Sports World Grand Prix Darts at City West. Game on.
Off the ball. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Welcome back. So Brian O'Driscoll's in studio. We've talked largely about Ireland's win over Scotland. Let's turn to the opening weekend now. New Zealand 23, South Africa 13 in Pool B was just gripping, enthralling to watch in a host of ways. Before the 17 points in 5 minutes, before the New Zealand magic kicks in and blossoms, even though New Zealand had the ball a lot and South Africa, it looked like they were in trouble. South Africa looked unbelievable. For the first 20 minutes I thought, oh good God.
Yeah, we were thinking, God, I don't know which team we want to win here, because they
were suffocated.
Yeah, but it's difficult to sustain that level of intensity for longer than 20 minutes.
Do you think New Zealand were aware of that?
I don't think during that period of time that you're thinking about that. Right. You're trying to weather a storm, knowing that teams like New Zealand as well know that they'll get their opportunities. So when a team is having a purple patch against them, it's about trying to hang in there and not concede at all, or don't concede too many points, because, you know, again, no side does that for 80 minutes. So, and certainly not against New Zealand. They'll always have their chance or always have their shot. So they managed to see it out, and that was the problem. With after 20 minutes, there was
3-0.
There was a 3-0 differential, and
at that point, were you thinking?
I just thought, oh, that's painful.
Yeah.
That you know, because you know New Zealand have tries in them. It's rare enough that they don't score a couple, even though their points scored this year have been way down. Particularly in Rugby Championship, it was down like 15 or 20 points average. So, not saying the sides are working them out, but they haven't been as potent in attack. But then, bang, 17 points in
5 minutes.
In 5 minutes, and
awesome.
Blows the game out.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, New Zealand are back favourites again. For the first 20 minutes, like South Africa, are the team to beat, and then it just shows how much the World Cup and opinion can swing in roundabouts. Because here we're talking about Ireland and how it was such a great performance, but they find it difficult against Japan, or someone else really shines through. England have a better performance. It's like, oh, so you're going to have those peak and troughs. I
was thinking that's just the fourth time that Mo'unga and Barrett have actually started together. I know they've gone into it during games, but this is just the fourth time they've started together. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, I love that. That double playmaker distributor. And there's such a confidence to Barrett when he gets in there as well. He's another one that doesn't tend to waste his time when there isn't an opportunity on. He's calling it because it's there, and again he'll bide his time even when he does get into first receiver and there's nothing for him. He won't try and create magic. He'll just play another phase to then give himself a shot in 2 or 3 phases time. So I think it looked a lot more savvy. It looked a lot as more cutting edge, because they had those strikers. I thought Ardi Sevilla had a cracking game. Crotty is important to them. Again, he's kind of the glue in their backline almost. Their Conrad Smith, that's a big compliment for Crotty, but just someone that pulls it all together really well. So marries, the brilliance of the strike play of their wingers with the brains of the operation, Aaron Smith and Mo'unga, or Barrett. So just a very solid performance for them, and then they ratchet it up, and all of a sudden they're very, very hard to catch when they go ahead like that.
It's a joy to watch.
I thought it was a poor decision that the ref didn't sin bin. Was it the winger? Mapoasi. I've got his pronunciation wrong, but the left winger, when he chased back and didn't release, I think the ref, on a try-scoring opportunity like that, it can't be a penalty. It's got to be a yellow card.
Kieran Reid went up and said as much to him as well. Actually.
Yeah, there was a little whisper, and he went to his TMO. Actually, made him change his mind. He should have just gone with his gut.
I'll come to you on referees in a second. Before we leave that,
I can't believe I can't remember his name. But anyway, it'll come back to me.
We'll come back to it. So, were there vulnerabilities about South Africa that Ireland in particular are equipped to take advantage of?
Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with their attack game. They obviously have that brutality and that bludgeon, but subtlety and nuances that other sides possess, and Ireland definitely possess, I don't know if they have. Okay. And when they come up short, as New Zealand denied them in that first 20 minutes, I don't think they're a team that reverts to plan B very often, and when you run out a bit of puff on the initial 20-minute burst, I don't feel as though they have a team system or structure in place that they create opportunities for themselves. I think they've got game breakers, and Cheslin Colby is the perfect example. Kick loosely to him at your peril. You saw what he did one-on-one. He's 5'7" or 5'8", but he's a pocket rocket, and he bounces off tackles. That's the problem with small players, when if you hit them and you're expecting them to crumble and they don't, and they bounce off you, and his go again is exceptional. So, they have the scope of those types of players, but I don't think they create opportunities for them per se. I think they go and find them themselves.
Okay. So listen to you then, you're saying if Ireland survived that initial 20-minute blitzkrieg, then actually the game is really there for them.
Listen, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, and maybe the answer to that is yes. I think they will, obviously, like all sides, you'd grow with confidence if your blitzkrieg manages to accumulate you
3 points,
more than 3 points. If you get 10 or 13 points, 12 points, all of a sudden, you're into the ascendancy, and confidence levels grow, and you think what you're doing is right, and just your energy reserves remain high. Whereas after 20 minutes, and you're 3-0 up, and all of a sudden you're thinking, what do we have to do against each other? This is our best game, and obviously we don't have it. So that has a negative impact on you. And so I think a big aspect for Ireland, looking ahead of ourselves to a potential quarter-final against South Africa, is that survival of knowing the onslaught that is coming, and that you have to ride that out, or try and take the game to South Africa as well, and not think as though they're gonna have their purple patch, but try and start well against the first 10 minutes. Absolutely vital. And if you can get a score, I think that's a massive win.
Yeah, it's going to be a long build up to this South African game,
isn't it? Just I'm sure people in Samoa and Japan and Russia, I'm sure they're not overly hopeful.
France 23, Argentina 21. It was another brilliant game. The Lopez drop goal ultimately to France's rescue. So do we come away thinking, geez, France look really good, but then Argentina, when they realised this Maul thing was working out quite well, just kept doing it, and France seemed powerless to do much about it. So whose credentials are massively grown after that one?
I think Argentina's more than France's. So France in the first half, I thought the back play was some of the best back play that I've seen from a French team for definitely 10 years.
Was there structure to it, or were they just in the mood?
No, there was structure. This is off strike plays, off scrum and line out, where the timing of their runs, their depth, and the angles of running, committing defenders, but being an option was rugby league-esque, and it was magnificent, and a good defensive team like Argentina. When you're having to commit big ball carriers, Fakatawa running short lines off Fiku or off Ntamak, and then pulling the ball out the back to Pinot, who was the strike runner, going at full tilt on an arc. Like, that is what we associate with French rugby, and it's been a decade since we've properly seen it. So great to see some of that magic and angles of running, and lots of teams force the switch play. Good French teams let it happen organically, where it's not a cross, it's someone running across the field and another player remaining upfield, just still running towards the try line in a straight line, but letting the ball carrier manipulate the defence. And those sort of things are what French teams tend or have done best. It was so nice. It was like we saw the effect of Fabien Galtier for the first time, and I hope from a rugby perspective we get to see more of it, because it's a thing of beauty when they're in full flow, and I think it's typified with the way Damien Pinot runs. He looks as though he's such an athlete, and there's an excitement and there's an enthusiasm with which he runs, and it's a throwback to his old man in the 80s and 90s.
So what happened to them?
The problem with them is the top 4 inches. They are, I don't think mentally, they have the toughs. I think they're going to need to feel a little bit more pain before they can be built back up.
Right.
I wonder about them physically. I know they got a new fitness trainer and that he's worked them really hard, but I think your fitness can get you out of trouble at times, and you're able to outwork the opposition when things aren't going for you. I think they become so introverted and tighten up, and they go away from that game that they had so much success in the first half. And once Argentina, who I think are a bit of their bogey team and are in their heads, once they came at them, particularly with that maul, and they were having so much success that they started protecting their lead. Can't do that in any rugby match. Second you start protecting the lead, you start losing it.
Okay.
You must, irrespective of how many scores you are up at half time, it's got to be 0-0. You've got to try and just win that second half. And they just were like, okay, I can't remember what the half-time scoreline was, but they thought, right, how can we see this one out? You can't see 40 minutes of Test rugby out against a team as passionate and as excited as Argentina get at Rugby World Cups, and let's be honest, who have a proven track record at World Cups. When Ireland have struggled, Argentina have always almost overachieved.
And a good old dust off.
So they weren't going to lie down thinking if we lose this one, well, everyone's saying we're going to lose to England, that's us out.
Yeah.
So
there's a bit of steel there.
Yeah, I thought they were also, from a refereeing perspective, I thought they were very harshly done, even on that last no penalty where Camille Lopez counter-rucked. I thought, was it Bernard LaRue didn't roll away from the ruck, and any other time of the game, I think that's a penalty.
So, the refereeing then, to conclude, I know you didn't see the England game, we'll get a look at them across the next couple of days, obviously next week. So the offside line's been talked about in various games, not least New Zealand, at the crucial moments. There was certainly a lack of TMO intervention in the Japan-Russia game. There was the Yato Reece Hodge moment, which ended Yato's game.
He's been now, hasn't he?
Yeah. So the TMOs, are they sitting on their hands a little bit with some of the, whatever bit offside, we'll come back to that in a sec, but just some of these tougher challenges, the TMOs are now being accused a little bit of sitting on their hands, and there was a bit of scaremongering almost pre-World Cup that we're going to see a raft of yellow and maybe red cards, and it hasn't transpired that way.
Far from it, quite the opposite. Yeah. Where you would have anticipated, there was one in the there was a shoulder charge in the first game, Japan against Russia. Yeah, where
scrum half, I think.
Yeah, it was where the ball was kicked ahead, and a play. I don't know, the Russian player. It wasn't a forceful hit to the head, but he still made contact with his head. It was sort of a semi-pull out of the tackle, but was still wanted to body check him, and he ended up hitting him high neck, maybe above neck. And I couldn't believe how if we're all looking at it and everyone sees that, how is the most important person in that decision-making process oblivious to it? So I think there has to be a responsibility and an onus taken from the adjudicators of Rugby World Cup. It's the showpiece of our sport, and certainly you want to set the tone early on, and particularly after everything that we'd heard from World Rugby about what to expect, and the mandate set out by Alain Roland about foul play and so on. It surely was the perfect opportunity, without giving yellow and red cards out willy-nilly, to set the standard. And it could have happened in game one, definitely should have happened in game two. And there's been other incidents as well.
It's strange, all right. Maybe the psychology was initially they put out the mandate, and then various coaches said, well, we don't want the World Cup decided on a refereeing decision, and it's almost put a seed of doubt in the TMO's mind. But now there's been a backlash to that, so I suspect the next couple of games, I'd be shocked if there was a TMO sitting on his hands again.
After round one, we're nearly through the first batch of games. So after, I'm sure Alain Roland is going and talking to his referees, and they, as much as the players are going away and analysing their performances, they're likewise going away and seeing and the knock-on effect of poor performances early on is they're not going to get semi-finals, quarter-finals, semi-finals, finals, and they have work hard on their games as well as the players. People think they just turn up and they read it. They look at the opposition. They see that where they're negative or what they'll be hot on. They go and talk to the coaches and the captains about areas that they feel that they need to be more positive, and giving them a chance before penalising them, before seeing an infringement and having already had that conversation. So I thought they could have gotten a few things an awful lot firmer and set that tone early on.
Is the offside stuff anything we haven't seen 1,000 times before?
Probably not. I think, listen, Ireland, I'll be the first. Ireland were offside, too. And you don't see with every camera angle. Liam Toland, I saw, picked up on it early in the second half, where Ireland were definitely offside. It wasn't called. that responsibility has to come from the assistant referees. You know, you think about how much the man in the middle has to deal with, of looking at rucks, of worried about crocodile rolls, about players sealing off, about who the first man is, and he's really looking at the pillars or the guards, the first person on either side of the ruck to see whether they're onside. Everything else should be the responsibility of the assistant referee. Yeah. And Louis Picamoles in the Argentinian game made an intercept at a kind of important juncture in the game, and I can't for the life of me understand how it wasn't picked up. And the way to beat, you know, the offside line is cheat collectively. Don't have a lone wolf will be spotted or should be spotted by the referees. If you're a foot offside together or a foot and a half offside together, it's far more unlikely to be pinged than it is for one individual to step out of the line. So, we want fast, free-flowing rugby. The best players to have time with ball in hand and create opportunity and space. So it's a no-brainer to bring those defensive lines back because we're going to get a better spectacle.
So to wrap up, that's kind of round one done, weekend one done. They front loaded the opening weekend with some of the group defining matches: Scotland and Ireland, France, Argentina, South Africa, New Zealand. At least you can say it kind of lived up to the hype. There'll be less excitement maybe over the coming weeks in parts, but it was pretty good, you have to say.
Yeah, it was great. It was. We got some belter games. You know, the Kiwi South African game was very exciting, as was the Argentinian France game. And from our own perspective, it was exciting because we performed so well. Are
you now officially upgrading your Ireland prediction for this World Cup to champions?
I always said that we can win it. I did say we can win it. We need a lot to go for us, and I maintain that we need key individuals to stay fit, but. One foot does feel as though it's in a quarter final. Okay. And there's a lot to be excited about. And that might be dashed in 80 minutes, but I think there's every possibility. One thing I'm sure I do know, that there's some nervous South Africans out there now. That they looked at the performance, having lost to the Kiwis and then watched Ireland. They'll be thinking they really need to bring their A game because Ireland like that will be a difficult proposition in a quarter final against them.
Which is a bit, and that's about fair enough. What you didn't want was this team to arrive, Ireland, I mean, and massively underperform, or for the wobbles of the earlier part of the year to continue in and everybody be saying, what the hell happened? At least now you can approach the rest of it with a sense that, well, they'll give themselves a decent shot here.
Yeah, and that's all you want. They've built for a number of years. They deserve a good shot at it, and if their best isn't enough against South Africa, you can genuinely hold your hands up and go, South Africa are some team. But I think if they play somewhere close to the standard they played against Scotland in a quarter final, they will push either of those Southern Hemisphere teams, and particularly South Africa, very close.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Thanks so much, appreciate it.
Nice one.
Brian O'Driscoll on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.